call to order the February 13th meeting of the Nelson County Board of Supervisors. If you will, please rise for a moment of silence, followed by the Pledge of Allegiance. Thank you. Mr. Rutherford, if you'll lead us in the pledge, please.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. All right, welcome. First up, we will start with public comments. Just remind everyone that public comments are limited to 3 minutes per person, 5 minutes if you were speaking on behalf of a group. If you're speaking on behalf of a group, please state that group and only one member from that group speak. Please be aware of your time. The 3-minute time limit will be monitored by Mr. Reed here, and he will give you a 30-second notice. And please be respectful of those around you, and remember that we are on live stream and who knows who's watching, so please be respectful of that as well. All right, we will start out with, first up, is it Gibbish? Robert? Rainbow Ridge? I'm sorry? Goobish. Thank you. Please state your name and your address for the record. You have 3 minutes.
Robert Goobish, 334 Rainbow Ridge, Flagler. So I have in my hand here over 400 pages of a report on vaccinations, which I think is good food for thought. And there's a statement by the person who put this together, and it sums up the 400 plus pages. I can conclusively say that vaccination is the biggest medical fraud in history. Vaccination, along with war, could be the biggest fraud in all of history. For each disease epidemic from 1850 to 2018, all you need to do is replace the date and location in the article to the current date and location. You'll come to the inescapable conclusion that the drug companies have been running the same racket repeatedly. Each generation has been burdened with vaccination since 1796. This crime of greed will continue unless the people are aware of it, which is why I bring this forth. And here is a more current report, 50 pages, by a retired Lieutenant Colonel Green Beret. And within his 50 pages, which he is describing that this COVID story was actually a war on human beings, it was nothing that was not, it was premeditated years before. And what they passed out as a vaccination to help people was exactly the contrary. And he states within his 50 pages, just as the individual has no inherent right to govern another individual, neither may the state govern matters that God has given to the church or the family. If the state attempts to exert its authority over realms that God has delegated to others, it must be resisted. Moreover, those who publicly identify where the state has overstepped, along with those who resist the state's encroachment, are servants of God who ultimately contribute to the well-being of the whole society. So I share this with you so possibly we'll become more educated on things like vaccinations, pandemics, so in the future we might have more truth to back us up. Thank you.
Thank you. Next up, we have Ojana, Pine Hill Lane, Norwood. How'd I do?
Not too well.
Thanks for being honest.
Okay,
Please state your name and your address.
sure. Hi everyone, my name is Anjana Gigi Radhakrishnan, and I live at 56 Pine Hill Lane, Norwood, Virginia. In the month and a half since I've moved to Nelson County, I've had the opportunity to talk to a number of folks across the county. And I hear two main issues. One, the need for economic investment, and two, an equal need for a workforce to meet those business needs. Now, those problems are not unique to Nelson County. You hear it in the news. There's businesses and industries across the spectrum that are facing labor shortages. Now, a lot of people would think of that as a problem. I see that as a golden opportunity for Nelson County to to create a competitive advantage that sets it apart from the counties around the region and encourages investment. And this is the reason why. If Nelson County were to develop a reliable workforce that is distinct from those around it by creating a database of all individuals who are willing and able to work, the hours they're able to work, their availability during the week, but most importantly, the skills they currently have as well as their career interests. That is a commodity that businesses and industries across the country are looking to find. And there's no other county that is currently doing that work. So my proposal here for you all today is to invest in a strategic workforce development plan that involves doing an inventory of workforce, including the skills, but also creating a workforce training program for the folks who are interested in entering. Because another problem that you hear often from businesses is there are people that they don't show up very regularly, they don't know how to work on a team, they're not punctual, they don't know how to pay attention in detail. It's often because those folks have not had training in those soft skills. So if Nelson County were to provide that type of training for the workforce that is currently here in the county, that would be a real commodity for folks outside of the county to invest in the area. The reason why that's important is because another concern that I've heard from across the county is that people want to maintain the rural and the natural beauty of this environment. If you have a commodity like the workforce, like a robust workforce available for industry, you're going to be able to pick and choose what industries will come into the county. That gives you a power and leverage. So that focus on the workforce is really key to having the say in who comes to Nelson County. So that's what the proposal is for. I have a proposal with a budget, a timeline, some additional details. The reason why I speak very authoritatively on this is because I was most recently an Associate Director for Workforce Insights and Research at the Manufacturing Institute. I spent a lot of time talking to manufacturing leaders and workforce members across the country on this very issue. I love Nelson County, the beauty of the nature here, the people have been great. I would love to contribute to the community in this way. So I'll give you all the proposal with my resume and my business card. If you're interested, please contact me.
Thank you. If you want, you can set that on the table.
Okay.
Yep, and we'll get that from staff. Thank you. All right, next up we have Mr. Waterfield.
My name is Elwood Woodfield. I am homeless because I'm a whistleblower and a victim of a malicious slap campaign by this county. I have 4 things that I want to address if I can keep my mind focused. First, I've asked you about 2 years ago to pass a resolution making this county a Bill of Rights sanctuary. Number 2, bring back Keep Nelson Beautiful. It's beyond me to why you would get rid of such a thing to begin with, but you did. I lost my train of thought. 2 more things. A board, appoint a board, like that police oversight board in Charlottesville, a board of citizens to oversee your actions and every other department in this county. The 4th thing I'm going to say, anybody that's in this room from the media, I got 3 very important documents here that you need to see. Because they say, what you've done to me, the world's going to know what you've done to me. You cannot hide it, and you're not going to cover up what you've done. And, that's all I got to say, but I'll be back tonight, and I'll think of the 4th thing I wanted to bring out to you. Because, like I say, I can't even express to you the impact it's had on me, my family, and, well, let me say one more thing. There are some big heroes in this county. Mr. Rhodes, Pastor Rhodes, always here. Dee Dee Green, Unity and Community, Lynn Carson. You got a lot of good people in this county, and you're ruining the rural character of this county. Y'all have a good day. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, that's all we have signed up to speak. Is there anybody else who would like to speak this afternoon who did not sign up? Come on up, state your name and address, please.
Hi, my name is Tish Blackwell. I'm here on behalf of the Jefferson Area Board for Aging, JABA, 674 Hillsdale Drive, Charlottesville, Virginia, 22901. The JABA team would like to thank you all for another year of support and collaboration. Our partnership makes critical services for seniors and adults with disabilities available to everyone. Working together is more important than ever as we address issues of social isolation, inaccessible medical care, strained caregiver support, housing, and transportation. This is particularly true in Nelson, where 38.2% of the population is over the age of 60. And of that population, 10.5% are in poverty and 11.4% live alone. In fiscal year 23, JABA served 766 individuals in Nelson. Some of that support included providing over 5,700 hours of activity to older adults at the Nelson Community Center, serving over 1,000 nutritious hot meals to adults made by our in-house chef with menus approved by our registered dietitian. JABA's Home Delivered Meals program distributed over 8,700 meals last year to 45 individuals in this county. And we are happy to announce that we have some new staff that has come in as we look to increase the numbers of people that we support in Nelson County. LaRonda Gray became the new manager of the Nelson Community Center in October. LaRonda has been doing an excellent job at the center, and she has continuously increased the center membership during her tenure. We also welcomed Lizzie Lewis to the JABA team as our health educator. Lizzie is a certified CPR trainer and Healthy Steps instructor, and she works with groups in a community setting as well as with individuals to understand how to live a healthy lifestyle. To further demonstrate the need of this support and the partnership that we have with Nelson County, I do have a story I would like to share with you of a Nelson County couple receiving help from JABA. A husband of an 81-year-old female suffering from multiple sclerosis and a stroke called JABA for help with his wife. His wife is confined to a wheelchair and is dependent on him for bathing, dressing, and transferring. Her 86-year-old husband is her only caregiver. He has called the rescue squad 45 times this past year to assist him in getting her in and out of bed. JABA's Aging Services Coordinator met with the couple and determined the wife had a long-term care insurance policy. The coordinator called the insurance company and was determined she was actually eligible for up to 6 months of in-home care or financial assistance for an assisted living facility. The couple decided that they would like to use the in-home care, and the coordinator was able to help them with that so that his wife could remain at home. She also had them sign up for home delivered meals, which was a relief to the husband who was also performing all the cooking in addition to the caregiving. The husband and wife reported that they were extremely happy with the relief that JABA had provided, and JABA is continuing to work with this couple to address needs beyond that 6-month period. We greatly appreciate the support and partnership with Nelson County. Funding from the county enables JABA to provide supports and programs for the people who live here. We understand that there are many funding needs in Nelson, and we have also made a funding request for fiscal year 25. We greatly appreciate the board's consideration and for supporting older adults, adults with disabilities, and caregivers in the community. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else care to speak? It's not signed up. If not, we'll close the public comment section. All right, next we have the consent agenda. Is there anything anybody needs to pull out separately? If not, I'll entertain a motion to approve the consent agenda as presented.
Mr. Chairman, if there's no, to remove anything, I move that we pass the consent agenda as presented.
We have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Chair votes aye. Consent agenda is passed. Next, we have presentations. First up, VDOT report. Mr. Brown?
Thank you, Chairman Parker. Have a few items to report on this month. The first one, the new traffic count that was requested by the board for Route 151. That raw data, it has been completed. We've not released it yet, but after we get the raw data, we interpret it and come up with the final report. So that should be coming out very soon, Mr. Reed. We are doing a pedestrian study on Route 29, just north of the traffic signal for the pedestrians that cross Route 29. To see if there are any improvements we need to make right there. There are currently pedestrian crossing signs up. Our traffic engineers are monitoring that to see if we need to take additional measures to make that movement safer. I do want to report to the board that Route 674 Jennings Creek Road is closed. We closed it a couple of weeks ago. We have a pipe culvert that has failed. We expect to purchase the pipe within the hopefully next week. How long it takes to fabricate it, usually it takes 4 to 8 weeks for them to fabricate it. And but once we get it, receive it, it should be within a couple of weeks we have it installed. But that is what we need to do. For our state forces, we are cutting the bushes, boom axing, what we call it, on Route 151. From 151 from Bryant to 250. That is part of our commitment to the board to try to attain better sight distances on that section of highway, and that will make a big difference. We're also boom axing cutting bushes on Route 29 from Amherst County line to Albemarle County line. We've had inmates from the prison camp in Rustburg up here cutting the median, and we are been cutting the outside edges of the road with the boom axe. We are planning a litter pickup around the 1st of April countywide through our contractor, which will be Route 29, all primary, and some of the major secondary routes. And the last thing, VDOT will participate in the Nelson County High School Career Day. That is coming, I think it's March 28th, so we will have a booth there and be trying to hire some Nelson County folks in some engineering and other positions. So looking forward to that. We attended that last year and it was very enjoyable, so I'm looking forward to that. That's all I've got for y'all. Michelle.
Very good. Thank you, sir. Anybody have anything for Mr. Brown?
No, but thank you for the work that's been happening, cleaning up the ditches and all that.
Yeah, we still need to look at that. We haven't looked at children.
Yes, we need to do that.
We need to do that.
Yeah. I don't have anything else to say.
Thank you, Mr. Brown, for the report on the traffic count on 151. Do you know when that data might be available?
They have not given me a date. I talked to our traffic engineers last week. They said the count was completed as far as getting the raw data, and they had to review it and get it in its final form. I hope it will be within 2 weeks. They know that the board is anxious for that. So
We will be
I don't
standing by.
anticipate it be long.
Thank you.
I'm fine, thanks.
Very good. Thank you, sir. Appreciate it. All right, next we have the Comprehensive Safety Action Plan Goals, TJPDC.
My name is Curtis Garpignano. I'm a planner with the Thomas Jefferson Planning District Commission, and it is my pleasure to be here with you all to discuss the Comprehensive Safety Action Plan that the TJPDC is developing in partnership with our jurisdictions, including Nelson County. And I'm joined today by my colleagues, Sandy Shackelford and Christine Jacobs. And my goal for this evening is just to provide you all some brief background on the Safe Streets and Roads for All SS4A grant program, and to seek a resolution of support from Nelson County to support efforts to reduce roadway-related fatalities and serious injuries. So Safe Streets and Roads for All, SS4A, is a grant program that was established with the passage of the Bipartisan Infrastructure Law in 2021. And it provides funding for planning efforts and implementation efforts. Those implementation efforts are basically where you get the construction and actual activities that would work to reduce deaths and serious injuries on the roads. So the TJPDC applied for funding for a safety action plan, and we were awarded that funding with support from you all. And this is important because by developing this comprehensive safety action plan, we are going to render Nelson County and the region more broadly eligible to receive funding for implementation projects through SS4A. So this opens up a new pot of money potentially for projects in the future. And this process is being managed regionally by the TJPDC, but we want this process to be locally driven. We are going to be working closely with your staff to ensure that this plan is not only a regional plan, but is also a local and hyper-local plan. So this slide just shows some of the overall benefits of a comprehensive safety action plan. Our goal is to use the planning process to identify implementation projects that will improve roadway safety for all types of users. And these can include infrastructure improvements, certainly, but we will also consider opportunities to improve roadway safety through traffic safety enforcement, education, and emergency services. And another major benefit of this planning effort will be that it will allow each locality to develop a pipeline of projects that could be implemented through a wide array of funding sources in addition to Smart Scale. So that could be those implementation SS4A funds I mentioned earlier, but it could also be a variety of other funding sources, including some of the ones you see on the screen on this slide. So this slide is just showing the required components of a comprehensive safety action plan. So that first box, leadership commitment, there is a requirement for a leadership commitment to supporting the reduction of deaths and serious injuries on the roads as part of the eligibility requirements for a safety action plan. And the plan is also required to be data-driven and to incorporate a robust public engagement process with special attention to inclusive and representative planning processes. And the TJPDC will use its established transportation programs to provide the ongoing oversight, monitoring, and reporting necessary to meet the grant requirements. And I'm here with you all today because of this first box here, this leadership commitment component. So the purpose of my attending today is to get a commitment from you all to support efforts to reduce deaths and serious injuries on the roads in Nelson County, because that is one of the requirements for the Comprehensive Safety Action Plan to be eligible to receive implementation funding in the future. And just to give you all some context, this is showing some of the data on roadway-related crashes, fatalities, serious injuries in Nelson County over the last 5 years. So from 2018 to 2022, there were 173 such serious injuries or fatalities on the roads in Nelson County. And the commitment must include a goal and timeline for eliminating those roadway fatalities and serious injuries, which may be accomplished through an ambitious percentage reduction goal by a specific timeline. So after discussing these requirements with Nelson County staff and understanding that the vast majority of the Nelson County road network is maintained by VDOT, the state, our recommendation is that Nelson County adopts the same goals that are outlined in the state's Strategic Highway Safety Plan. And that plan identifies a goal for a 50% reduction in deaths and serious injuries by 2045, with an ultimate goal of one day eliminating deaths and serious injuries. And this resolution is not just a commitment to those reduction efforts, but it is also a commitment to Nelson County participating actively in this planning process and prioritizing recommendations that are identified as part of this planning process. So we are asking for you to approve the resolution of commitment included in your packet today. And with that, I'm happy to take any questions you may have. Thank you.
Thank you, Curtis. Anybody have any questions for Curtis? Any comments on Mr. Rutherford?
One thing, and this is, I'm just kind of curious. I guess, go back to the slide, the number of fatalities was 32 in total over the last 5 years. Obviously, I guess we don't have last year's total, we have, but, I mean, I'd be interested to see, where those fatalities were located in our community.
Yeah, we can get that information to you after this.
Yeah,
I don't have it on hand currently, but we can definitely provide that after this meeting.
yeah, that would be great.
Yep.
I believe there to be a map in our comprehensive plan.
Way in there.
That says that.
Any other questions or comments? It's the pleasure of the board.
Is there an action item on this?
Yes, there's a
Yeah,
resolution.
I would make a motion that we adopt resolution R 2024-08, Nelson County Board of Supervisors, resolution of commitment to roadway safety goals.
Second.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Hearing none, we'll have a roll call vote.
Mr. Rutherford?
Yes.
Mr. Harvey?
Yes.
Mr. Reed?
Yes.
Ms. Ligon?
Yes.
Mr. Cron?
Yes. All right, thank you. Resolution passes.
Thank you all.
Thank you all for what you do. All right, next up, we have Nelson County Department of Social Services 2023 Annual Financial Statement. Brad, how are you?
I'm doing good, sir. How you doing?
Doing well, good to see you.
Okay, thank you. Again, good afternoon, Mr. Chairman, members of the board, county administrator, Mrs. Gary. Thank you for the time this afternoon to talk to you about our fiscal year 23 annual financial statement. What you have before you is just a synopsis of our program expenditures that has been provided to the citizens in various programs that the Department of Social Services administers. As you see reflected in the document, the biggest expense we have to our budget, which is true for probably most departments, is staff and operations, which is reflected in budget lines 849, 851, and 855. The number before you reflects BDSS's accounting and what was reimbursed to the state and locality in relation to the programs that we have administered. BDSS reports about 1.1 million in staff and operation reimbursable expenditures. Our allocation for fiscal year 23 was, for budget line 849, 851, and 855 was about 1.2 million. And I'll share with the board this variance in the budget is due to low staffing for fiscal year 23. As we onboard more staff for this year, I anticipate the variance to decrease and give us a better picture of our staffing. The next set of figures you see reflects the benefit payments to clients. These funds are a mix of federal and state funding. The only program in this category with a local match is the auxiliary grant, and that provides payments to seniors and citizens who meet the category for assisted living. Budget line 811, 812, 814, and 817 are the budget lines we use to fund foster care and adoptive services for children currently in our care and custody. These budget lines reflect the payments that have been made for foster care maintenance. These are the payments to foster parents, adoptive parents with kids that have been approved for adoption subsidy and for fostering futures, which provides payment to foster children over the age of 18 to provide them with some financial stability, as many of our foster children have a difficult time when they turn 18. Budget line 829 through 898 reflects the goods and services that we purchased on behalf of clients. This could include paying for a one-time assessment for a client, purchase goods such as food, clothing, emergency one-time assistance. I will share with the board that our adult population continues to grow in the county. And of course, with age comes a greater need for community-based services and community-based care, as well as home health and home medical services. So, and just getting to the last section of the document, I want to talk about the statewide benefit payments. Reflected is the amount that has been spent on programs for citizens. The Medicaid program spent about $41 million on Medicaid benefits to citizens in Nelson County. This includes payments to doctors, hospitals, community-based services for our seniors, and counseling and other services for our children and families. In our SNAP program, or food stamps as it's commonly called, we were able to generate about $5 million in SNAP benefits. The SNAP program only allows for food purchases. So this $5 million reflects food purchases at the grocery store, convenience store, local farmers market that accepts EBT benefits. In summary, our allocation was almost about $2 million total for fiscal year 23. And from that allocation, we were able, through the federal and state, we were able to draw down about $52 million in total program spending and administrative costs. And this translates into real dollars for professionals providing services to our community, our staff, businesses who are providing the goods and services to citizens who are able to maintain their independence in their home, and families who are thriving with some supportive services. So that's my presentation, and I'll entertain any questions that the board may have at this time.
Very good. Thank you, sir. Anybody have questions for Mr. Burdette?
I don't know. How many kids do we have currently in child protective services?
In foster care,
Yeah,
or
foster
in foster care, I think we have about 17 kids, if I'm not mistaken.
Do we have a trend up or down where flat?
We have been trending down. So I think we hit a little roadblock with COVID with some adoptions. We had some kids that were transitioning out to adoptions. But I think we've gotten those numbers down. So, yeah, and I'm not even going to say it. Yeah, but we haven't had a lot of kids in care currently. So it's a good thing.
Anybody else have any questions? Not, thank you.
Thank
Then
you, sir.
I'll just say, as a member of the DSS board, it's been a pleasure working with you, and thank you for all the work you
Thank
do.
you all
and
for your support.
settling in well, and we're glad to have you.
We're getting there. We got some staff on board, so we're excited.
Yes, sir. Thank you. All right. Next, we will move on to new and unfinished business. Ms. McGarry, would you like to step up and introduce each of these? Please.
Good afternoon, everyone. So as the board is aware, the county and schools are both at the point where we will need to start to incur significant architectural and engineering costs associated with schematic designs for the county social services building project and also the school's high school renovation project. The county's architectural and engineering costs are expected to be around $1.1 million, and then the school's costs around $2 million. The financing strategy is being presented by Davenport today to you all. They presented at the school board meeting on February 8th. The strategy is to secure temporary financing by a bond anticipation note for both entities through a request for proposals process. In addition to that, our bond counsel, Sands Anderson, is proposing that the county adopt 2 reimbursement resolutions, one for each project, in an amount just slightly over the anticipated project cost to cover the interim and future long-term financings. So his advisement regarding these resolutions is that the adoption of a reimbursement resolution by the board is not a commitment to borrow money and is not a commitment to borrow any certain amount. The purpose of the reimbursement resolution is to comply with federal tax regulations to allow reimbursement of certain expenses paid up front before the issuance of a debt from the proceeds of that debt once the debt is issued. So the recommended action for today is hear Davenport's presentation, and if amenable to the plan of finance presented, we would take a vote and motion and second to proceed with the issuance of an RFP for interim financing for the bond anticipation note, and then potentially adopt proposed reimbursement resolutions. So with that, I'll introduce Ben Wilson of Davenport.
Good afternoon. As Kenny mentioned, my name is Ben Wilson. It's good to be back in front of you. Do you all have this in front of you? I have some hard copies, but you got it. Okay. So with that very nice, concise overview, I might sound a little long-winded here, but just to go over sort of the process to where we've gotten to from here and what we're looking to do over the next probably 12 months. So we just flip to
Right behind you.
Thank you. Okay, so we've been working on this debt capacity and affordability analysis for about 1.5 years now. And as a part of that, we were contemplating the county potentially issuing $57 million worth of projects. And as a part of that $57 million, we've been assuming that the two projects that Ms. McGarry mentioned, the DSS building and the high school renovation, were a part of that. So now that we've gotten to a point where design is beginning for both of those, or design is at a point where they will start incurring costs, we wanted to come in front of you to talk through this financing plan. And really in that analysis, we've been assuming that both of those projects would be funded on a long-term basis. We're talking 25 to 30-year repayment. That's very much normal for projects of this nature. So really what we're here to talk about today for the most part is the fact that we're going to start incurring costs over the next several months. And in order to prevent you all from having to spend the cash that you have in the bank, which is healthy and we don't want that to be spent down too much, we've come up with a plan to borrow on a short-term basis right now, probably in the next month or two. And that would be a bank loan that would stay out for only as long as this interim process is going on, and then when we go and get that 25 to 30-year financing later this year or the beginning of next year, we would pay off this shorter term loan. So the next several pages is just sort of talking through the process of that interim financing, and then I do want to talk a little bit about the permanent financing because there are some considerations that we'll need to think through over the next several months on that. So for the DSS building and for the school renovation, they're pretty much close to the point where schematic design is completed, and then they'll start working on more of the details. And for the DSS building, the expectation is that that design process will be pretty much finished by early fall, with bids going out in October and hopefully having bids in hand by mid-November. And at that point, we would know what the cost of that project is. Now, the school renovation project is on a similar track, but it's going to take a little bit longer. It's a bigger project, and we would expect to have bids in hand for that by next January, so less than a year from now. So this interim financing approach, we are recommending that we move forward with it because you're starting to incur costs related to design. Like I mentioned before, this interim financing would only be outstanding as long as we don't have the permanent financing in place, and we want to wait until we know what the actual costs of the projects are going to be to do that. Based on the conversations we've had with staff and with bond counsel, just with the structure we're going to be asking for, the short-term note, probably 1 to 2 years at maximum, it makes the most sense to move forward with a bank for that. And like we did about 1.5 years ago with the Larkin property, we would propose going out with a request for proposals to banks. We have a pretty comprehensive distribution list that we'll send it off to. It includes local, regional, as well as national banks. So we would do that, and it would be structured as what we call a lease revenue bond, and that would be actually issued by the Economic Development Authority. Again, almost exactly what we did with the Larkin property 1.5 years ago. The EDA would really just be acting as a conduit issuer. They're not going to be making payments on anything. It's really going to come back to the county to be making payments on this. But just for the legal documents and the way that the structure is set up, we would need the EDA involved as well. And the expectation is that a school facility is what's going to be securing the short-term financing. And we talked to the school board about that last week as well. So they're well informed on this also. So, preliminary timeline based on our conversations with staff. We talked to the school board last week. We're talking to you all today. We plan to speak with the EDA board. I believe it's actually the week after we finalize this. We set the date as the 26th. So we'll go and talk to the EDA on the 26th to ensure that they're up to speed and they understand the process and they know what's going on. And then after we've had the conversations with all three boards, we would send out this RFP to the banks. We want to give them at least a few weeks to review it and put together their proposals for you all. We would collect those proposals around March 22nd, and we would work with staff and bond counsel to review the proposals and develop a recommendation for which bank it makes the most sense to move forward with. We would then return to you on April 9th for you to make your decision on who you would like to move forward with for the financing. The hope is that we would then talk to the EDA the next couple days after that and get their approval, and then talk to the school board 2 days later after your meeting to get their approval as well, because we'll need their approval to use a school facility as collateral. And then we would expect to close probably the last week of April, and at that point you all would have the funds you need to move forward with these projects. So that's sort of broad strokes what the plan is for the interim financing. Do you have any questions on that?
So many.
Oh, yes?
What is your thought on how much? And for this interim, just a ballpark would be lovely to hear.
Oh, yeah. So like Candy mentioned, the design costs are expected to be in the $3 to $4 million range. And again, this is going to be a piece of what that long-term financing is going to be. And right now, reinvestment rates are actually very, very favorable. You'll likely be able to reinvest whatever you borrow at pretty much the rate that you borrowed it at. So we would just get enough for you all to be able to cash flow through when we expect the permanent financing to occur. And at that point, we would pay off these notes, 1 or 2 notes, depending on how the actual legal documents are structured. But
So the money that we have in reserve
Mhm.
hopefully is working for us. I haven't been privy to that information, but it's making more percentage-wise than we are going to borrow. Is
Yeah.
that correct?
that is our
Our hope.
understanding. Yeah, and so when you borrow, this is going to be a tax-exempt financing. So that's going to be at a lower interest rate than what you can invest at. So instead of putting your money to work on these projects, you can invest those funds, and really, when you borrow these funds, it's all going to get drawn down at once. The banks right now aren't very fond of the line of credit approach where you draw down as needed. But it'll all get put in an account, most likely at Virginia SNAP, which is the state non-arbitrage program. They earn very favorable rates, and they keep track of how much you're earning as well to compare it to what you borrowed at, because there are some IRS regulations there. But yeah, so we would be reinvesting the borrowed funds, and also your funds are invested on the general fund side. Any other questions?
The 57 million debt service, would this, if we're looking at 2 to 3 million, we're deducting that from this in the short term and then putting it back at when we do the next financing?
Yeah, from the perspective of that analysis, it's all sort of one thing.
Right.
Yes, right now, when we do the interim financing, this 3 to 4 million that we're talking about is a part of that 57 million.
Okay, so you've
And then
already
it'll get rolled into that bigger permanent financing that occurs when we know the costs of the projects.
Okay, so then are we actually looking at 37 million, or and change or 35 million? When you
Right
put-
now,
when you put
it's,
the GSS and the school innovation.
so it's about 35 million.
Okay.
And there is a grant that the schools have received for that 25. There's about 2.5 million that they've received. So that borrowing is going to be a little bit less than 25 million. But yes, it's about $35 million worth of projects that we're talking about right now.
Just that you've considered the payback of the interim loan in that.
Yes. Yes. Yeah, because the other projects that we've talked about in that 57 million, like they're a little bit more vague. We haven't defined those as much. So they're not at a point where we could borrow anything for that because we need to have a definitive project to really go out and do a borrow.
Are we concerned about the number of banks that'll step up and give us money with the commercial real estate situation?
I don't think so. I mean, this is again going to be a 1 to 2 year loan. The county has very strong finances. The fact that you do have money in the bank is one of the things that lenders are going to be looking at. And the fact that you have fund balance well in excess of what we're going to be asking to borrow, that there's not going to be a real concern there that banks aren't going to step up. I would expect we would see local banks as well as some national banks that would be interested.
And part of the procurement of the debt that we get, it's part of it's that financing program which you referenced in there, which so the interest rates that we find ourselves paying is like 3.5% to 4%, something like that.
Yeah,
I don't know
so,
what it is now.
right, so talking about the permanent financing, there's really some different options than what I've been talking about with that interim financing. So the interim financing, it's short, we're going to be using a school as collateral, and the banks are going to like that, to do a direct loan with a bank. They would be willing to do that. When it comes to the permanent financing, again, we're talking about 25 to 30 year loans. That's just not something that banks have an appetite for at the moment. Some of them will go out to 20 years, but if you're asking for 25 or 30, you'll find it difficult to get many banks interested in that. Which is why these next several pages, I will talk through a little bit what the options are for that permanent funding when we get to it later this year or early next year. And really there's 3 main avenues that you could do for that. There's the Virginia Resources Authority Pooled Financing Program, the Virginia Public School Authority Pooled Bond Program. Now those two are very similar. They're both run by the Commonwealth. The main difference is what sorts of projects they're willing to fund. And then the third one would be a public issuance of county bonds. And that's something we've talked about in our prior meetings about the county potentially going and getting a bond rating. And then you're able to issue directly into the public markets to investors. Now there is going to be an investment bank intermediary there, but that provides a little bit more flexibility, and we can talk about that more. But back to your original question, yes, the long-term financing, I would estimate right now in the 3.5–4% range. We ran Virginia Resources Authority for another client recently, and we were looking at 20, 25, and 30, and I believe the 30-year rate we estimated, and we work with VRA as well, so we feel pretty confident about our estimates, was just under 4%.
And I do believe at one point, just to reference the pool a little bit more, the county realized a lot of debt service savings when we did some refinancing several years ago or something like that. We got to reduce interest rates, so this is something that we can also refinance if necessary and modify. But 3.5% is pretty cheap.
Yeah. And you never know what happens. I mean, by the time we go out and actually issue these long-term bonds, you might see rates well below that, depending on what the economy does over the next 12 months. And yes, you're exactly right about refinancing these. I mean, the short-term loan, we're not worried about refinancing that for savings because, again, it's going to be less than 12 months most likely. But the long-term, all 3 of these are going to have opportunities to refinance. Now, all three typically have what we call a 10-year no-call period. So after the bonds are issued, there's a 10-year period where you aren't able to refinance them. But again, you're going to be issuing them over 25 or 30 years. Even once you get past that 10-year mark, you're still going to have 15 to 20 years worth of debt still outstanding that you can refinance. All right? Yeah.
I assume that this is, when we get there, it'll be choice A, B, or C, it won't be a combination?
So that's something that I think if I talk through the next couple of pages, that will be helpful. So starting with VRA, the way this would be set up is you all would be entering into a loan with VRA. VRA does these pooled programs where pretty much any locality or most authorities in Virginia can apply to be a part of this pool, and they'll turn around and they'll sell bonds on behalf of everyone to the public markets. So you are getting access to the public markets. However, there are some admin costs. They add a little bit to the interest rate to pay for the costs that they incur associated with this. There are 3 chances to issue through VRA during the year. The first one in May, then in August, and then in November. So 3 pools, we call them spring, summer, and fall. You typically have to apply to those pools about 3 months in advance. So that's where the timing of this could influence what direction we go in. The fall pool will price bonds. They'll go out to the markets and see who wants to buy them in late October. Now, based on the timing of the DSS project, we probably won't know the cost of that project till mid-November. So that might be something, that's going to be something we're going to have to talk through with staff and with you all about the timing. When will it make sense to go to VRA if VRA is the choice that we decide to go with? Now, yes?
Yeah, so it says that VRA does not fund school projects.
Exactly. So VRA does not fund school projects. If we were to go the VRA or VPSA route, yes, it would be 2 separate financings. So that's one of the disadvantages. You wouldn't be able to fund the school project at the same time. Now, they are on slightly different timelines, so that it may just work out that you aren't going to want to fund them at the exact same time. But that is one thing to consider here. So with VPSA, very similar. They only do it twice a year, in the spring and in the fall, and they only fund school projects. Now, one thing I didn't mention on VRA is they're going to need collateral. So there's going to need to be some sort of asset put up as collateral for that loan. VPSA allows you to issue general obligation debt. Essentially, the security is your taxing power. If you were to try to do that normally, you would have to go to a referendum. VPSA allows an avenue to use a general obligation. You won't have to encumber an asset. So that is definitely one benefit to using VPSA. But on the flip side, like you said, Mr. Reed, this doesn't fund county projects. So there is a scenario where it makes sense to go through VRA and to go through VPSA. But one solution could be a county public issuance. That involves, like we've talked about before, going out and getting bond ratings, which even if you don't end up taking this route, might be a good idea to provide you flexibility going forward if you have other projects to give you financing opportunities. And then also with the regional jail and other regional entities, if you all are rated, it helps them get funding as well. But with a county public issuance, there's a little bit more work on the front end for folks like us at Davenport and bond counsel. Just there's more documentation to be done. If you were to do VPSA or VRA, their folks would be the ones doing that, and then it's built into that admin fee that you pay. Here, you don't pay the admin fee, and we help with that. So it's sort of almost a wash there, but there is more work that the county staff will need to do as well on the front end just to get everything pulled together to be able to do this. There's pretty much maximum flexibility with the timing of this. So you could go and get ratings at any point over the next 10 to 12 months, have those ratings ready, and then when you have both bids in hand, you could go out and issue the debt whenever you're ready to do that. There's no limitation like there is with VRA and BPSA of the time of the year that you're able to do that. Any questions there?
Yeah, you know, obviously, whenever you're negotiating loans, I know in the private sector, you know, sometimes the more money at hand, the more interest you're paying, the more entities are more interested.
Right.
You know, obviously, if we're looking at that front end with the VRA, the BPSA, you know, will you walk us through if there are advantages if we're combining the two and doing this side of it, if those exist or not?
Absolutely, yeah. And again, this is something that's going to be developing over the next several months.
Sure.
There are advantages to doing one or the other. So if you do VRA and BPSA, it's a more streamlined approach for staff, and it's something that VRA and BPSA do all the time. BPSA also offers the benefit of being able to use that general obligation, not having to encumber an asset. There are a few other advantages and disadvantages we pointed out on these pages. But yes, we will absolutely, I mean, our job, we're your fiduciary. We are here to help you all. We're not here to sell you one way or the other. We're here to talk through with staff and with you all what the options are, what the considerations are for those, and inevitably help you move down whatever path you decide to move with. All right. So, just some next steps here. We're going to work with staff to ensure that we have the dollar amount that makes the most sense for this borrowing this spring. Need to make sure that there's enough coverage to get you to the point where that permanent financing would be happening. And then we will be prepared to distribute that bank RFP, assuming you all are on board with that approach. We'll come back to you all, like I mentioned before, in April, and we'll have a recommendation of which way to move forward. And at that point, you'll be able to make a decision on that, and we can get the funding needed to keep these projects moving forward. These other next steps that are on here, some of them you've seen before, potentially implementing financial policies. That's just a best practice in municipal finance to have financial policies in place. You all are very well managed, but it's good to have it in writing for future boards and future staff to keep the momentum you have going forward. So that's something we could work with staff on to get implemented. And then also, if a credit rating is something that you all are interested in, that is something we can work with staff to move forward on. When you do initially go to get a rating, you can get what we call an indicative rating. We would go meet with the rating agencies, give them a pretty thorough presentation about the county's finances, the county's debt, the county's future plans. And they would give you an indicative rating. And at that point, we would be able to say, all right, we would like to take that rating public, and they would publish it, and you all would become rated. But that gives you the opportunity to review it and say, well, that's not what I was expecting. Let's not move forward with that. We have preliminarily run numbers, and we think you all will almost certainly fall within the AA category. So the very top level would be AAA. There's a AA category with sort of 3 sub-levels, and we think you fall somewhere in the middle of that range, just based on your demographics, the economy, your finances, your debt, and your expected plans for debt in the next several years. And then, yeah, we can update the analysis as we get more information about these projects and the timing and the amounts.
To clarify,
Yeah.
so what you just said, that is with the assumption of us taking on that debt.
Yes.
I guess that's on the next page.
So in the appendix, we included, these were presented in December just to provide some background on the impact of these projects that we're talking about. Really that light green line, the 8.2 on that page, and the 2.2 is what we're projecting once that full 57 million has been issued. So with just these 2 projects, about 35, really borrowing 32 to 33, it's gonna be lower than that. It's gonna be
Yeah, I was
a
gonna
little
say,
bit better.
because that, the 57 million is just, that's more of the,
Yeah.
what we qualify for now, what we're using.
Right. It was like the capacity. that we
Sure.
calculated.
Capacity, if you
Yep.
actually.
Right. And then we also had that $75 million case before, but that's sort of not the main scenario we've been talking about here.
In that rating, sorry,
Yeah.
I'm looking at page 14.
Yes.
I guess, so these ratings are based off of the industry standard S&P or Moody's standard?
In this case, it's S&P. We use S&P and Moody's are really the two
Yeah.
leading rating agencies. We use S&P here because they provide specific ranges for
Sure.
this specific ratio. But S&P and Moody's are both.
And so we don't officially know the number until we pay to get the credit rating essentially, but presumptively double AAA.
I would say in the AA range.
Double A.
Yeah.
Okay, and that's.
Which is very strong. I mean,
Sure.
that's what a lot of counties in Virginia are rated AA.
And that is with the assumption we're gonna utilize that debt, or is that before that debt?
That is assuming you are issuing $57 million.
But
But because you don't have much debt on the books right
Sure.
now,
so presumptively, would we be AAA today without any debt utilization? Obviously, I just put you on the spot, but it would be.
I don't know if I can say for sure one way or the other, because
No,
they
no,
have,
I'm
they,
saying
they have a model that we can use
Sure.
to estimate that, and that's what we've done. But they also have a little bit of a black box of, oh, we can make adjustments for pretty much anything. So the size of the county and the population might be something that they would key in on. But yeah, it would be a favorable rating we would expect, at least high AA. Any other questions? And if you have any more, please feel free to ask Andy and she can pass those along to us and we can answer them to the best of our ability.
Very good. Anybody? Anything else? Thank you.
Yep, thank you.
Okay, so if the board is amenable, I would suggest, just by, motion and second, you can vote to proceed with the issuance of an RFP for the interim financing in the form of a bond anticipation note. And then we could consider the reimbursement resolutions in a separate action.
And what is that? All right, so repeat that motion.
I was gonna say, what was the first
That
one?
motion. First one.
If you have your summary of the new and unfinished business,
Yep.
under recommended action, number 1.
Reimbursement.
So those aren't the same as these resolutions. Yeah, that's the ones we have.
Yeah.
2024-09.
So first you want to just authorize us to proceed with the issuance of an RFP for the interim financing as presented. And then secondly, consider adoption of the 2 reimbursement resolutions in a separate action.
Two separate.
Yeah.
Separate
two
actions.
separate. So the first one is moved to proceed.
All right,
with
so-
RFP for interim financing.
Is that a motion?
Sure.
All right, we have a motion to pursue the RFP for interim financing. Do we have a second?
A second.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Hearing none, we will have a vote, a roll call vote.
Mr. Rutherford?
Yes.
Mr. Harvey?
Yes.
Mr. Reed?
Yes.
Dr. Moody?
Yes.
Mr. Parker?
Yes. All right, very good.
And then the 09 is
Next, we
separate.
will entertain motion to, and we'll do these as two separate. Resolution 2024-09, that is for the reimbursement for the county project.
Mr. Chair, I move that we approve Resolution R 2024-09 as presented.
All right, we have a motion. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Resolution 2024-09. Hearing none, we'll have a roll call vote.
Mr. Rutherford?
Yes.
Mr. Harvey?
Yes.
Mr. Reed?
Yes.
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 Mr. Chair, in succession, I move that we approve resolution R 2024-10 as presented.
All right, and that is for the school renovation project. We have a motion. Do we have a second?
Well, second.
Any discussion? Hearing none, we'll have a roll call vote.
Mr. Rutherford.
Yes.
Mr. Harden.
Yes.
Mr. Reed.
Yes.
Dr. Lady.
Yes.
Mr. Park.
Yes. Very good.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you. All right, next up, we have the CHA proposal for evaluation of Livingston water and wastewater system.
Okay, just briefly, I'll introduce this item. Previously, the board adopted Resolution 2023-54, which authorized the county in partnership with the Service Authority to proceed with contracting an engineering firm to evaluate the Livingston water and wastewater systems. CHA is the contracted engineering firm through the Service Authority's term contract, and they're here to present the proposal for this work. Just in quick summary, the cost of this Phase 1 proposal is a not to exceed amount of $25,000, and is expected to be completed within 60 days of receipt of required data from the County and Service Authority. So staff would propose the recommended action if amenable to the proposal. We suggest you do a motion and second and vote to proceed with the Phase 1 proposal as presented with funding of not to exceed $25,000. This funding would be provided to the Service Authority from the non-recurring contingency budget line. A subsequent action to this, if approved, a transfer of these funds from the non-recurring contingency to an appropriate expenditure line of the budget would be included in the March FY24 budget amendment resolution. So I'd like to introduce Mr. Stephen Steele of CHA to present their proposal.
Appreciate the board having me here today. First and foremost, as a 8-year chairman of the school board in my county, I appreciate your service to your community and what you're endeavoring to do at the school. We're partnering to do almost $40 million of renovation work in Dallas County. It is no small task. So appreciate what you do for those kids. This work will be the beginning of what I would call a roadmap for the authority in the county. It's probably timely that Davenport's talking about finance matrix, I call it, where they can drop projects in and show the county what that is going to require from a revenue generation standpoint and when that might be required. So this study will collect all the data that I need to begin putting those blocks together. How much can each plant serve right now? When is that going to be pushed up against the 80% level, which is when the regulatory agencies will require an expansion of that facility? So I'll work with the planning department to look at your land use for what you might be planning for that property, what kind of water and sewer demand would each of those different types of facilities require, and then look and see if the existing facilities can handle what you want to put there, and at what point would you exceed the capacity of those water and sewer systems as you build that property out. So it will give you a roadmap that says, okay, in the first 5 years, we're not gonna have a major spend because we're gonna be doing X, Y, and Z, but we need to be mindful that at the 10-year mark, that could be a big revenue ask of the county. And so I'll be working with staff to put together what those options might be, what the property can handle, how much acreage you might have to dedicate to stormwater management, etc. And so I propose to do this hourly, not to exceed, because I really want to gain the confidence of the board and staff that we're doing a great job, give you an update on what we find in this initial piece, so that we can then track what you think would be the next step moving forward. And so I don't know if both plants are going to have significant increase yet, but this first piece will tell us whether or not that's something we even have to endeavor upon. If we don't put enough stress on those plants to do anything, then this is the last time you'll see me on this topic. Maybe not forever, but that's essentially what we're going to do. And at this time, I don't know how much more detail the board wants me to get down into, but I can go through each piece of what we plan to do, or I can just take some questions and maybe clarify anything that doesn't make sense at this point.
So this is only demand generated by this property, not on the whole system through Livingston?
I think we talked about looking at, there was one other location that you guys had something in mind for that would impact those plants. And so we certainly would not overlook anything that you have on your radar now that would impact these two plants in the Colleen area. I can't remember that other potential
Is that in
development.
reference to the,
Yeah, it's the social services building in Livingston. So it is meant to be a system-wide study, taking into account what demands the Larkin property development might have whenever that happens, and the social services building in Livingston specifically. Otherwise, we don't know what other development may happen within that system area, but it is meant to look at the entire system over a 30-year period, I
Correct.
believe.
Oh, so it will give recommendations if this many houses can also go in, things like that, or?
This is gonna be a living document, all of these really are, so I don't wanna
Well, how often do we circle back and get accurate numbers? Does that make
So
sense?
if the baseline development planning that we come up with and I bring back to the board doesn't include some things that you think might be on the 30-year horizon, then we would certainly catch that at that point. But this document will be developed in a way that if a property becomes available and the land use plan changes at some point, we will be able to insert those numbers and recast what impact that may bump what we think has to happen 15 years out of one of those plans. If a new piece of property comes up and you think that now is part of your comp plan, that may bump that timeline back to having to be done in 5 to 8 years.
is there any metric that exists that, as she has just mentioned, like, that you can produce, say, hey, you have, because a bedroom is a generic number by health department standards of how many gallons per day is
Right.
used, right? Same thing with wastewater.
Correct.
Is, if we look at the system today, we have a capacity for X, 50 homes. And if you want to do these other things, which we have those two big projects, you either need to improve or you're going to be just maxed out. I think it would also be good for us to know, as, infrastructure is important in the 129 corridor, and if development, where it happens is critical, what it would take to get X more, or how much capacity we have in this time. So for example, if somebody wants to come in here and build 20 houses along the water and sewer authority, hypothetically, do we have that capacity we're willing to take, or what should we look for in the next 20 years?
And once I get the baseline of those numbers up,
Yeah.
if another opportunity exists and you don't want to do the work needed to expand your available capacity, then somebody's got to say,
Someone will pick, yeah,
we're not gonna do this one
yeah,
because we're gonna do this one.
yeah, and at that point, you'd be getting into proffers and all sorts of other stuff.
So yes, to answer that question, I think I do wanna be mindful of the county's comp plan and what you do have zoned for different types of development so that we're not short-sighted. But we're really focusing on the Larkin property because it's, in my mind, it's been teed up to be the next really available piece of property for development in this area. And so that's what we'll plan.
And it would include like phase 2 of the Callow Hill property, since that's something that we've, discussed.
Yes, it certainly could. Just for background information, I guess for the public and maybe Dr. Ligon, in the master planning process of the Larkin property, the board was interested in determining the feasibility of a water impoundment there, reservoir along Dillard's Creek on that property, as well as a treatment plant. So the first steps in determining that feasibility, we think, is to examine what are the current capacities and how does it measure up against what we already know we have in the plans for the Livingston systems.
Forgive me, I have heard of projects being, for lack of a better word, just stopped because it was going to max out our service authority capacity. So I guess
Are you referencing the
Yeah.
development in Livingston potential?
Yeah.
That one?
yes.
If that, I think, the
Yeah.
info that we got from the service authority was if it took place, it would max out.
So the point of this study is,
To find out where our capacity truly is and what the future would look like.
yeah, but it sounds like it's focusing on Larkin and social services.
Well, those are the known development areas at this time. that
It
could
just sounds
impact
like
the
to
water
me
capacities.
we're maxed out. I mean, we're at 80%. That's the floating thing.
Right, that particular development was a rather large scale development, I think, for this area, for that system, and the reason that was stopped was the seller backed out of did not want to proceed with the contract
Well, I
for that
understand that,
project.
but the information was put out there that that would max it out.
It seemed like it was pretty likely that it would have, but we didn't have the analysis that we're gonna have now to be able to say what things will get us to that 80% capacity, in which case something would have to be done, so.
And part of this
I think we will have
report,
much better information, more solid data for you all to base decisions on. Does that help?
so part of this report is also when and if we max it out, which we will, what to do next.
Yes.
Is that part of
Yes.
it? And then there's also a study for water impoundment that's not part of this study.
I think that would, correct me if I'm wrong, I think the intention is that would be one of the options that would be explored as a way to expand the system capacity.
Correct. I don't plan on using the entire 25 at this point. What I need to do is get down in the weeds with the planners and make sure we know exactly what the county is planning that would impact those two plants. Get some demands on those. Find out from 3 years of water data and wastewater data of both plants, what is the actual amount of water that can actually be pulled out of that raw water source. So what can those plants actually handle right now? What does the county have planned that would ultimately come to those plants? And if all that is under the 80%, then we're done. I'm pretty sure that's not going to be the case. So if that's not the case, when and what types of development will push you to that, and how quickly will that happen? And then the next time I stand in front of you, if you felt comfortable that we've captured all that, we would put a number to what it would take to have a detailed cost estimate of what would be done at those plants, and what is the revenue generation needed for that. Does that mean you can do a phase 1 expansion to a plant to buy you the next 10 years worth of stuff you want to do? Or is the only way to do it is replace the entire thing? That's a whole different story. And so I think it's important as decision makers, you know what can you do incrementally, and how much time can you buy yourself with that option, versus does it make more sense to go ahead and do the whole thing because that's the best spend for the dollar. So that's kind of the journey that this study will take.
So, let me try to clarify for me. This resolution and this study would not include a engineering study for the possible capacity of the development of a Dewar Creek impoundment, but it would signal a preliminary step for us deciding that we wanted to do an engineering study on that, or is that going to be included?
Yes, that would be the phase 2 study after we get this first.
So this
back
is
to
phase
kind of-
1.
Yes.
This is what we've got now, as opposed to what we might be able to do should we take steps to develop the Dewar Creek impoundment.
Correct.
Okay.
Just really just hoping for a Diller Creek impoundment.
Well, I think we just want to be mindful that we're exploring all of the options, and that being one of them.
And I think the cost for what it is that you're proposing to do is realistic. It's not, $25,000, or less is good for us to get this under our belt so that we can decide how to proceed.
We chose this route because when I do these, if you come out of nowhere with a massive 3-digit figure, and then you still want to do stuff incrementally, this gives us a chance to reach a milestone, revisit what we got at that point, and then let's all decide what we want to do once we've gotten to that. So that's why
I understand. I get frustrated with the studies, and it seems for years people have been saying we need water impoundment, but let's do another study.
Well, I think I need to come back and tell you what do you think that impoundment cost really is?
Well, the study's not going to say that. The next one will, right?
Right, but if you don't need the impoundment, because the demands don't drive the need for something that large, and you can do a much smaller upgrade to a plant, then let's make sure we shut a door behind us every time we get to the fork in the road.
Any other questions?
Could you restate the necessary motion for this, for the $25,000?
Okay. It would be to proceed with the phase 1 proposal as presented, with funding of not to exceed $25,000.
So do we have a motion?
Mr. Chair, I move that we proceed with CHA's phase 1 proposal not to exceed $25,000.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Any discussion?
Just one question. What's the time frame that we assume this will get done? Be completed in 60 days?
I believe it's 60 days from when they receive all of the required data from county staff and service authority staff.
Okay.
We'll do everything we can to get it to them very timely.
Other questions? Clarifications? Going once? Nothing? I'm just waiting. Okay. If not, we will do a roll call vote.
Mr. Reed?
Yes.
Mr. Rutherford?
Yes.
Dr. Lee?
Yes.
Mr. Harmon?
Yes.
Mr. Parker?
Yes. And then we need a second motion to transfer the funds.
Not at this
No.
time. We'll bring something back
That
in
would
March.
be another.
It'll be in
Okay.
the budget amendment for March, yes, sir.
Okay.
And just to note, both the county and service authority will be signatories on the proposal, and I believe the service authority board will consider it at their next meeting, I think later this week. So,
All right, next up, we have Fall River Fire Department request for a truck.
okay. I believe Jeff Fletcher from Flower Volunteer Fire Department is also here to answer questions. Just briefly, they are requesting funding for a new equipped tanker under the county's 80/20 program for fire and EMS vehicles. The request was endorsed by the Emergency Services Council, which was noted in the provided letter from the council president. They solicited 3 quotes with only 2 firms responding. And Fesco Emergency Sales was the lowest proposal at $414,438, and they are the preferred vendor. So delivery of the tanker is estimated to be 400 to 565 calendar days from order, with payment due upon delivery. So due to this lengthy delivery time, the department is seeking the board's authorization to place the order and have staff include a funding request of the 80% of the cost, which would be $331,551. Have that put into the FY25 proposed budget, which is being developed, with the understanding that the funding approval would not be final until adoption of the FY25 budget, including this funding. So the Fall Volunteer Fire Department, part of that cost would be $82,887. Not necessarily part of this conversation, but typically fire departments will choose to fund their 20% through the interest-free loan fund, and currently Fauber has no outstanding loans. So at this time, if Mr. Fletcher is here, he can answer some direct questions if you'd like about the tanker.
Yeah, I've got one more thing. I'm Jeff Fletcher, the Assistant Chief of the Fall Volunteer Fire Department. And one more thing to add, if this is approved, the chassis will be ordered when it's delivered in October. If the board could approve an early draw of $119,000, it will actually save $9,200 off the total cost of the truck. So, I mean, that's a pretty good savings. So, does the board have any questions about the tank? We're replacing a 1988 tanker right now, so it's keeping us alive as far as maintenance costs go. And so it's just time to upgrade, just for the safety and for the protection of our service area.
Well, I can say I had intimate inspection of all the Fauber equipment because it made its way to my house. So, Mr. Chairman, if there's no other questions, I'll make a motion.
Anybody have any questions? No.
Thank you very much.
Mr. Chair, I move that we approve Fauber Volunteer Fire Department 8020 Program Trick Order Request R2024-11.
I'll second that.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Any discussion? I do have one question. The $9,200, the savings, is that something we would need to discuss now, or we can talk about that later?
Possibly, I didn't quite understand when the
It'll
119.
be sometime this fall, September, October.
Okay, so that would be in the FY25 budget.
Okay, so
So I think we're good.
Okay.
on that.
very good. Any other questions? Anybody?
What happens to the old one?
I guess we're trying to sell it. Or maybe put it into a pool if we can. I mean, it's an 88, so it's, dependability is one way.
Any other questions? If not, we'll have a roll call vote.
Mr. Reed?
Yes.
Dr. Meeting?
Yes.
Mr. Rutherford?
Yes.
Mr. Harvey?
Yes.
Mr. Parker?
Yes. Thank you all. Thank you. All right. Next up, Livingston Revitalization Branding.
As you may recall, the Board of Supervisors previously provided funding for a brand compass analysis for Livingston. This was completed through the Central Virginia Small Business Development Center and contracted consultants, the SPIL team, along with Livingston stakeholders. So the result of this work will be presented by Maureen Kelly and includes 2 branding options for the board to consider for use in the cohesive marketing of Livingston going forward. So we would suggest that if you're amenable to either of the branding concepts, the board choose one of the presented options for implementation. I'll turn it over to Maureen.
Thank you all. As Candy indicated, this is part of the large-scale revitalization of Livingston. We've been at it a long time, since the early 2000s, starting with the historic district, and moving through economic restructuring plans, moving through streetscape improvement plans, lots of plans, Dr. Langen. But we are here perhaps for an action item, so that's exciting. We work with a company called SPIL Team, thank you, and Team spelled T-E-E-M, never did figure it out. But anyway, you all have received this, so I'm going to go through this. Here we go. This program of work was occurred in, I think, November of 2023, and it included stakeholders from Livingston, businesses, residents. It was a wonderful group. I will say, at the end of the second day, the convener asked folks what their highlight was, and I've asked permission to share this. Sarah Holman said, "I drove through Livingston with new eyes." And that was strong. And so with these recommendations that you've seen, we moved on to the actual brand and what's called from a brand compass, which is an overarching, that's your message, that's your voice, that's just defines who you are, so you stay true and authentic to your brand. We handed this off to a young man who is a rather accomplished graphic designer. You may have seen his work on Bold Rock products and other national brands. He's pretty good. The economic development director in Nelson County actually got him the job at Bold Rock, so I have a different pricing for his work. And so Will went through this very carefully. This is what he calls his dream board. And as you can see, he's got the Spill team came back with 3 identifiable monikers, if you will, for Livingston, and they resonated throughout all of the studies and the work that we've done in this art, history, and nature, and that's what makes us different, is the love. And so we moved from that. So this is the first system, if you will. And I don't know what you know about branding, but it's an overarching goal in my mind that guides and drives all of your communications. What you don't want is to move away or too far outside those lines, because then what you get is what I look at when I see a lot of branding is a ransom note, where you have different size letters and things like that. So that was the first system. This is the second system. And again, sorry, those were bleeding lines and things like that. And again, you see the incorporation of the historical units, and this one has more of that base, although while you can't mix the systems, you can incorporate, say, the Virginia or the 1807, Will, sorry I missed that. But overall, the 2 systems are different. And so where we are today, let me back up a little bit. So since this work has been completed, we've gone out and talked to different groups, and we did small focus groups. We went back to the Spill team, said, what do you think? And everyone weighed in, lots of opinions, did lead to some tweaking of both systems, which was good. We sort of think we tightened them up. This morning I had a meeting with the Nelson 29 craft beverage trail producers and got their input. We've spoken to the Historical Society because we want to make sure, again, we were really true to who we are historically. The Wintergreen marketing team has weighed in. The Small Business Development Center came back with their marketing folks and reviewed everything. Again, small focus groups throughout the community and outside, well, not outside Nelson County, but what we wanted to do was make sure that it wasn't totally Livingston-centric, if you will, that folks from Wintergreen, folks from Montebello, actually had a voice in it. So it was good. And then, I guess it was last week, met again with the Livingston Village Association and the Livingston Beautification group. I don't remember what the 3rd letter is, Carla. And so we're here now to talk about moving forward.
So you feel this has been properly circulated and commented on?
I feel pretty good about it. There's been probably I was trying to, I was making notes before I stood up here, and I was like, it's probably way over 100. I wouldn't say more than 150. And that's kind of a wide range, so sorry.
And what's the general feeling? They like it?
Oh,
Which
both
one's most
systems
popular?
have their advantages. And so that's why we're here, because in this case, you're the ultimate arbiters of taste. But you don't get that often.
God help us all.
Write that down.
So
Dear God.
they have a favorite. Which one are they leaning towards? The Livingston Association?
The Livingston Association likes the first system.
The one with the heart of the up.
That one. Thank you.
Okay, so not the one you have up.
No, well, that's just was the last one on the slide.
Right.
So
Yeah.
this system.
Yeah. I agree. Yeah.
I'm a fan of that one as well.
Yeah. I mean, I like the other one, but the thing I didn't care for was it kind of looked like a B. I mean, I liked it when the heart was tilted, but when it's straight up and down, first thing I see is a B, not an L. I'd really,
Yeah,
well,
I will say that did get an optical illusion in my
yeah,
head. Like,
yeah.
once
I mean,
saw
when it was
one, I
tilted,
stuck at
when it was
one.
tilted, I saw a heart, but when it was straight up, I saw a B.
Yeah.
But no, I really,
That's awesome.
really like
And I
that.
think,
Those
where are our
are-
stakeholders at? We got
There's a couple here.
Yeah,
Carla, Patty, thank you guys for,
yes.
and, yes, thank you guys for being part of this.
So the next steps would be, and I know everyone's been a little impatient, but again, it's a process and you don't want to get out of order because you don't want to order banners that don't, match or follow the
Yeah.
brand.
We can put those on telephone poles.
I have spoken with AEP and we
They
can
said they're-
change the pole attachment agreement to.
Awesome.
So.
I like the
what-
first one. How does everyone feel?
I like the
Yeah,
first
yeah.
one as well.
So what do you need from us today?
The decision, say I don't know what version it is.
Yeah, that's what, we need to identify it somehow,
Yeah, as it sounds.
so we can vote.
See what?
8
It
as
is
the
C8.
number.
That's C8.
C,
461 or
number 8.
62, as it-
Whatever's, yes. All right, C8, I think sounds like the most identifiable number. So I move that we approve C8 as the branding concept for Livingston. I'm in love with it.
Right?
The
I
puns-
second that.
Puns are never ending.
Yeah.
I can see heart being blasted over the town,
We should-
like Vegas.
Let's rock.
That has been mentioned.
Oh, we could be, you know how like Roanoke has a star, we could have a giant
Heart.
heart.
There we go.
Buy that.
Let's do it. So I second his motion.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, we will have a roll call vote.
Mr. Rutherford?
Yes.
Mr. Harvey?
Yes.
Mr. Reed?
Yes.
Dr. Liggins?
Yes.
Mr. Parker?
Yes.
Mr. Chair, can we have a couple minutes?
Thanks for putting a smile on our faces.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, I know you did
Um,
that.
For a break? You want a break now? All right, anybody opposed to us taking a quick break? We'll come back in 5 minutes, because I know that always ends up being 10.
Yeah, well, Skip's not here, so.
Well, maybe it'll be 7. No, that's good stuff right there. That's really.